Hello everyone, my name is Catalyst and welcome back to the How to Not Suck series, the grammatically incorrect series that teaches you how to play Battlefield. As you may know, with this series we have covered every single specialist in the game, and with every new season comes a new specialist, so we need to learn how to most optimally play them and learn their quirks and tricks before suggesting loadouts for them. In case you're new here or missed any previous episodes in the series and are interested in watching them, there will be a link to the playlist in the description below. Today's episode is going to be covering Crawford, the Andrew Tate-inspired specialist that can somehow fit an entire minigun into a tiny backpack. Crawford is a specialist that seems to have a mixed reception from players. Some people think that he's good, some people think that he's bad, but I think he can be a very useful specialist when put into the right situations, which of course, we will discuss how to do that in today's video. We'll be going over his Vulcan minigun, when the best time to use it is, and how to best utilize him on the battlefield. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get to work. So, Crawford. Crawford is a specialist that when you take a look at his kit, he presents himself as being a very ratty specialist upon first glance. You think to yourself, well, right, this guy is going to set up in power positions all the time and mow people down, whoever is unlucky enough to cross into his line of sight. And while there is certainly an element of that in his playstyle, he is balanced in such a way where it becomes a little more complicated than just camping a lane with a minigun. I was actually surprised to see how much of your success as Crawford is dependent on how good your map knowledge and game sense is, and I found that in order to truly maximize the potential of his kit, it comes down to being able to work your way into unpredictable spots on the map and where he can ambush and lock down entire lanes for extended periods of time. That's the difference between just getting a few kills on a common flanking route and getting massive feeds in the kill feed and making yourself a problem on the map that the enemy team needs to deal with. And I really want to nail that point home in this video. This is not a specialist in which you can just get away with placing the minigun by a common traffic area and expect to get really good results. Where you place the turret and when you place the turret really matters, and you'll be able to hopefully see that come across in the background footage for today's video. So let's talk about the specifics of his abilities, because it's actually rather a quite unique ability. Crawford's specialist ability is his Vulcan minigun, which is a deployable minigun that can suppress and take down infantry with relative ease. The minigun can fire in full auto for 6 seconds after a brief spin up before overheating and entering a cooldown period of 10 seconds. The spread on the minigun works very similarly to how light machine guns worked in Battlefield 1. The longer you fire the weapon, the tighter the spread gets, and this makes sure that you can't just beam people with extreme accuracy from long ranges. And this is where finding optimal spots for the minigun comes into play, as I mentioned, but we will get to that later. The minigun does not have any ammo capacity to it, but what it does have is the longest cooldown of any specialist ability in the game, coming in at a 1 minute cooldown timer once you place the turret. Now, the good news is that you can pick up and place the turret as many times as you'd like, similar to Boris's sentry turrets, although I will warn you that the bug that exists for Boris's turret where it kind of just spontaneously combusts after you place it does also exist for the minigun. I don't know why it happens, but sometimes the minigun just kind of breaks on its own. It's annoying. I've had it happen a couple of times, and I thought I would make mention of it. Once the minigun is placed, it does have some unique qualities. It is currently the only ability in the game that can be used by both your teammates and your enemies. And while Angel's Supply Drop is an ability that your teammates can interact with, that is on a cooldown and it can't be used by enemies. So this ability is the only ability in the game that a teammate and enemy, for whatever reason, can use your minigun whenever they want to, without restrictions, and it also does not self-destruct upon death. There is a clip that I will play in the background for you right now where I get on the turret and go on a massive spree with the minigun. And the context to this clip is that this was my minigun that I placed the life before this one. So I actually died, came back, noticed that the enemies were pushing from that angle and got a massive feed. So your minigun persisting through death is something that I think makes this ability very strong. The minigun has a decent health pool. I'm not exactly sure how beefy it is, but I would guess that it's around 300 HP. It took me about 20 rounds with the AM40 to destroy it, so take that for what you will. And lastly, as it pertains to the minigun does have a slit through the middle that you can get shot through, so that's a nice little balancing trick. It's very easy for DMRs and snipers to headshot you through it, or if you're like me, pull out the little M44 revolver and shoot them through the hole. But either way, this really prevents you from just being out in the open and raining havoc on people. Now, I will mention that the hitbox for this can be a little bit tricky. As far as I can understand it, Crawford needs to be looking at you and shooting at you for you to get the appropriate angle for you to headshot him through the turrets. Otherwise, if he's not looking directly at you, sometimes the hitbox that is surrounding the minigun can kind of take some of the bullets that should be hitting, so it's a little bit inconsistent. So if you come across a Crawford out on a flank or something and you're going to try and go for a headshot, make sure that he is looking directly at you. It's a real Mexican standoff type of moment, but that's really kind of the best way to do it. Now, the minigun does have some limitations on where you can place it. I found that it mostly works on completely flat surfaces with some wiggle room. It seems to be very picky about platforms that are too narrow, and you can place the minigun on a slight angle, but I found that to be really inconsistent as well, so I would focus on placing it on large, flat surfaces like your mother's ass. Damn! Crawford's passive ability is called Ammo Cache, which resupplies revived teammates with gadget ammunition. Crawford also has the ability to revive people faster, similar to both Falk and Angel, so while I think it would be fairly easy to argue that Crawford's revive ability is the weakest out of the three in the game, I think it's still a really nice perk to his kit, and just the game in general that he can quick revive teammates. I think it really incentivizes being active with his kit instead of camping with the minigun. Really, you should think of him as being the most aggressive out of the three support specialists, and that's pretty much everything with his kit. Now on to how he should be played. Well, as I've already talked about briefly, your success with this specialist really depends on your map knowledge and game sense. You really need to be picky with where and when you use the minigun, and I have found that the best time to use the minigun is when you know that you're about to come up against a rush of enemies and you can find an off angle to completely cover a flank or lane and kind of bait them into your kill zone, because here's the deal, at some point people are going to anticipate that there may be a Crawford player watching some large areas, especially on breakthrough. People are just going to naturally realize that over time, and with Crawford, once your location is known, the only players that are really going to challenge you are the ones with a death wish, so you end up just kind of wasting your time watching an angle that nobody is going to be pursuing, or you end up dying because you get yourself outflanked. So you end up wasting a lot of time watching an angle that nobody's going to peek because they know you are there, and to me that is a waste of your abilities, and that's why you might be feeling kind of frustrated that you can't really do anything too substantial with this specialist. You really need to try and read what's happening with the game around you and choose your moment to strike with the minigun, because all it really takes to disable you is one rocket launcher to the face or an incendiary grenade, and you are practically useless. Here are a few examples to kind of help me explain what I'm talking about. The first example is on the last sector of the new map Stranded. In my few hours of playtime and my map knowledge, my limited map knowledge anyways, of this map, I know that the random spawns that the defending team gets on this sector pits them towards the back right portion of the flag, and by looking at the minimap, I know that based on where my team is positioned that they can only be coming from one direction, so I sprint, hit my minigun, and lo and behold, the entire enemy team is clumped up behind the crates in the middle of the point, and it is easy pickings for me. This would not have been achievable if I just set up my minigun on a common angle and just held it together, hoping that somebody would be brave enough to peek me. Instead, I was proactive, I judged what was happening in the game, and I acted upon it. Here is a similar situation from the defensive side of things. I noticed that the attacking team was making a push around me to the right, so I try and go over there and stop that flank from happening. Once I clear out the guy furthest away, I take up his last position, and I am able to wipe out the entire push in about 5 seconds, and they had no idea what was happening until it was too late. And that's what I'm getting at. Even though Crawford may seem like a wait and ambush specialist, you really need to be proactive in putting yourself in good ambush positions, putting yourself in areas of the map where you cannot be outflanked or that you can easily disengage from if you need to, and really try to play into what is happening around you on the map. Now, there are times where your presence alone does make you useful. So in this clip, for example, I'm not really killing much, but because of where I have myself positioned on the map and because of how many angles that I can cover here with my minigun, I allow my teammates to flood forward and we take this difficult sector. This specialist can be extremely intimidating if you aren't exactly sure where he is. You can't outflank him, you can't outpeak him. You need to have a good understanding of angles and map knowledge if you really want to achieve the best results, and that's why I like him quite a lot actually. He isn't a press a button to win type of specialist. He requires some brain cells to use efficiently. And in this last example that I'm going to play out for you, I want to again really nail home the point that being proactive with Crawford really is the key to success instead of just sitting on the turret waiting for people. This clip does not happen if I don't disengage once I place the turret to secure my flank. If I just sit on the turret, I die in this situation. Now, of course, the entire reason that I set up the minigun in the first place is because I just peeked a common traffic area and noticed that a bunch of players were coming off spawn, so I retreated, set up the minigun on an off angle that would capitalize off them running back to try and control the flag, which of course happens later on in the clip, and I kill 3 or 4 people. I think that Crawford is especially useful in situations like this in which you know that you're about to get pushed by a lot of people, and it's for that reason that I think he is much better in Breakthrough than he is in Conquest, although you can achieve similar results in Conquest too. I hope this in some way communicates the point that I'm trying to make here. I really was having a hard time coming up with how to explain how to use the specialist without sounding like I was talking in circles. As for what loadouts I would suggest with him, I would suggest running an SMG for Crawford actually, like the MP9, the PBX, or PP29, something that has the ability to reach out to longer ranges if need be. I do think that once the AM40 is fixed, it will be a viable option for Crawford as well, since it seems like it's likely going to serve that AR SMG hybrid role, and that's how I feel like Crawford is going to operate when he's not on his minigun. But of course, right now the AM40 is bugged to all hell, so it's still kind of trash. I would also run a med pen or med crate and smoke grenades. It's important to remember that Crawford is also technically a support slash healing specialist that can revive any teammate on the battlefield, so smoke grenades for safe revives are a must, and you will draw a lot of attention as Crawford on a minigun, so having something to heal with is really needed, which is why I suggest the med pen or med crate. If you wanted to be even more aggressive with him, you could run some spawning grenades as well, but I'm a huge fan of smoke grenades, you guys know that. As always, I suggest other compatible specialists to run alongside this one if you are in a squad with other friends. For Crawford, I would suggest Irish, Casper, and Pake. Irish is a really good specialist to run in combination with Crawford, as their abilities have really good chemistry with one another. You can place an Irish shield in front of a Crawford minigun to give him more protection, and of course Irish's Sentinel system is great for preventing explosives and nade spam for breaching Crawford, which is the best way to counter him, so these two specialists work really well together. Since Crawford is a specialist that relies heavily on information, Casper spotting anything and everything on the map is probably a good idea, so he pairs nicely. And similarly to Pake, she can see through walls and relay that information to Crawford on an off angle. And likewise, Crawford can lay down a lot of suppressive fire that allows Pake to get to the front lines. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but I was really struggling to find a third specialist that paired well with Crawford, to be honest with you. Because Irish is an absolute must run. You know, there's really only a few definite options for Crawford, and I think those are them. Normally at the end of the video of the series, I rank the specialists in both Conquest and Breakthrough in comparison to other specialists in the game, and I would say that currently Crawford fits somewhere around the top 5. I'm not sure that I would place him above specialists like Pake, Irish, McKay, and Falk right now, but I absolutely think that he has more value than the rest of the cast of specialists, especially if you can learn how to use him effectively. Crawford is a specialist that is better in Breakthrough than he is in Conquest, but as I said earlier, you can still find some success in Conquest, albeit not as frequently. That's the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you found this video useful and enjoyed your time here. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and leave a comment. If you made it to the end of the video, what do you think of Crawford? If you enjoyed it just that much, you should consider subscribing. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. My name is Catalyst, and I will see you all another time.